We're back. Now, the process of bringing our ISO rated shutter speeds and apertures together and show you how they work and how we can create f-stop and shutter speed combinations that work for us. Well, essentially what we want to do is give you a hypothetical situation. And let's take a hypothetical situation where we choose to use an ISO rating on our camera of 100. And if we can imagine that it is a beautiful sunlit day and we're outside with our camera and we want to get to the finest quality image that we can take, we want to use that 100 ISO rating. We know we have enough light, it's a bright sunny day. Now with our camera, and in the past we used light meters handheld in which we could take reflective readings off of objects as well as incident readings that fell onto the light meter. We all have light meters inside of our camera, and typically by depressing the shutter halfway, we will actually get a reading on a scale, and we want to find the center point of that reading for an exposure that is properly exposed, not too overexposed, too bright, or too underexposed, too dark. And once we pull up our camera tray, we take a reading. Of course, we're working manually, so we can absolutely manipulate all of these ratings, shutter speeds, and apertures to our benefit and create the image that we want. If we're outside at 100 ISO, I can imagine that we could use a setting of a shutter speed of 1/125th of a second, probably at an f-stop of 11. And that's just going on guesswork, and this is a hypothetical situation. But that is pretty typical of a reading for a very clear day. Now, of course, each of these numbers produces something for us. 100 ISO gives us, of course, a high quality image. Very little noise, but we have very little exposure latitude. 1/125th of a second means that we can handhold our camera. And unless we have a very supersized telephoto lens on it, we can probably handhold it, click the shutter, and not have or cause a lot of movement and get a fairly clear picture. At f11, we have a greater depth of field. And remember what depth of field is about. We'll get more about that later on. But we can only focus on one point, whether it's 3 feet away or 10 feet away. And everything in front of that 3 feet or 10 feet and everything behind it slowly goes out of focus. By stopping down our lens, it's kind of like if you wore glasses and you took your glasses off and looked through a little pinhole, things would appear more clear. This is what happens with our aperture. As we tighten that circle, make that a smaller circle in the diaphragm of our lens, when we expose that image, the light rays are more focused, giving us a greater depth of field. So we have a great latitude here. Now, the way these all work together is we can create different combos from this 100 ISO. If we have a shutter speed that this is a properly exposed in our hypothetical situation, if we wanted more, if we wanted a faster shutter speed to stop motion, to say, for example, we're photographing a soccer game, and we wanted to go up to 1/250th of a second, we are letting one stop less light in to our camera and exposing. So we have to adjust either in our ISO ratings or our f-stop. And of course, to let in one stop more light to compensate in this exact situation as if time was frozen, we can move this to f8. And you see f8 is next on the line of apertures or f-stops. This compensates at 100 ISO. Either one of these combinations will work in that particular setting. We can add more shutter speed if we wanted to 1/500th of a second, and then we would have to stop down or open up our f-stop to f5.6, letting in one stop more light. Now we can go the other way too. We can go down to 1/60th of a second because we might want more depth of field, and we can jump this up because we're letting one stop more light in. We can now now let one stop less lighted at f16. This is how we create those combinations. Now, if we have ourselves in a situation where we want a great deal of depth of field and we want a faster shutter speed, and we can't manipulate it from that because that's a proper exposure, what we can do is manipulate our ISO then. If we add and move this to 200 ISO, and at 200 ISO, our f-stop or one of our f-stops and shutter speeds will change. So it would actually be, let's say, 1/250th of a second at f11 would be a proper exposure at 200 ISO. We can move that up to 400 ISO. If we change our ISO rating to 400, then we can move this up to 1/500th of a second at f11. We can still have great depth of field as well as a very fast shutter speed. So now if we wanted to, for example, stay at this f-stop, and we can move this up to 1/125th of a second if we use an ISO rating of 200. Now we can also move that up to 400 and change that to 1/250th of a second. You can see that by changing the ISO rating, we have more latitude. We continue to maintain our f-stop, but have a faster shutter speed. And this is how these combinations work. Now, what we choose depends upon us. And certainly, we have in the manual setting absolute creative control to stop motion, to let motion move in front of us, to use different ratings to get different results, and different apertures to get different f-stops and depths of field. So try to find your apertures, your f-stops, your shutter speeds, and we'll get going, taking some great photographs, and I'll see you in the next video.